Hello, my name is David, and this is a video for clients of Tom Carpenter who use traveljoy. I'm going to show you how you can build a form in traveljoy to take info from new clients to create a client profile, and how to include a client agreement in that new client info form so that your clients, one, agree to your longer terms and conditions document by just checking a box, and two, agreeing to your fee structure by checking a box, and also three, acknowledging your insurance language. If you're watching this, it's probably because Tom has sent you a template of a sample client agreement that you can use. So I'm going to show you how to build out the form, add the fields, add the boxes for your clients to check, and for the language you can use the language Tom sent you, or you can draft something in your own voice that sounds the way you'd like to talk to your clients. So let's get started. The first thing that we want to do is in traveljoy, on the left-hand side, you're going to see an area that says templates. And you can go down to where it says forms and click on the forms link, which will bring up all your form templates. We're going to add a form. Now you'll see that it says My Templates and Team Templates. You just want to make sure you're in My Templates to do this. Team Templates is if you're sharing with other people. It's a little bit more advanced. So for right now, let's just make sure we're in My Templates, and you can click Add Form. This top part is pretty basic. We're going to just give this template a name. So let's call this New Client Info. I'm going to call it Demo, but you could call it New Client Info 2020 or New Client Info Agreement, whatever you want to call it. As long as you know what it is, that's fine. Clients are not going to see that name. Email template. This is going to be essentially how you pull in default language for the email that your clients get with a link to the form. Your clients are not actually going to see this form in their email. They're going to have a link to it. So this email template is just something that we can set up so that you don't have to type in the same thing every time when you want to send this out to people. We're going to come back and do that later. So we're just going to leave that with this sort of form email default for right now. The email button text is what we want the button to say in your email so that people can link to the form. So let's say fill in form, right? I'll show you where that is later on, and you'll see. And then submit form for the button text, you can leave that just as is. Now you'll see there are some other options here: require client credit card authorization, require client signature, share template. This is just a way that traveljoy offers a little bit more robust options depending on what your form's needs are. In this case, we don't need to collect credit card authorization or get a signature or share, so we're going to just leave those blank. We don't have to worry about those. So when you get past that, you'll see the main work area. You've got sort of this middle section, and then you've got this right list of different modules, essentially. And basically the way it works is we're going to drag things from the right over to the left to build our form. And the first thing we should do is we should just drag over a header here. And the header is essentially, you think of it like a title. And we're going to go ahead and we'll just say whatever your business name is, new client information, right? Something like that. These types here, this is essentially telling it what size you want it to be. There are three options, 1, 2, and 3. We can just leave this one for now. That's all we need to do with the header. Now, as far as the client information part of this, it's really simple because traveljoy has a lot of fields that are completely integrated with the client profile data, and you really just have to drag, and I'll show you what that means, drag these elements over, and they give you sort of everything you need. So for new client information, it's going to be depending on what you want to collect with this form, but the basics will probably be name. So I'm going to drag over name, and you'll see there's a lot of different stuff here. Oops. Hold on a second here. I dragged too much over. I'm going to do this one more time. You see what I'm doing now? Hitting this X to delete everything. That's good to know because if you make a mistake, it's really easy just to X things out. So let's go back to where we just have the header. What I wanted to show you here when I go name, you can see this little gray bar that's going above and below where the header is. I'm going to make sure that it's below, and then I let go of my mouse, and there's all of my information. So this automatically pulls in all the name fields for traveljoy. Now I'm going to do the same thing with address, and I'm going to make sure that gray bar is below the bottom here. And then whatever else you want to collect. Let's say I want to get email and phone. Those are two things that are important. One thing I will show you really quickly here is you can see that traveljoy automatically makes some of these fields required. So for example, this little red asterisk means that first name is required. People have to fill out their first name in order to submit the form. First name, last name, those I think are the only things that are required. You may want to make other things required, and that's really easy to do. So for example, email address, you already have an email address because you're going to be sending this to them via email, but maybe you just want to make this required to make sure that they pay attention to it and give you the one that they want to use for their trip planning. You could also do the same thing with phone number. You want to make sure you get a phone number from them on this first form to speed things up. Then other than that, you probably are going to want other things. One thing we find generally is helpful to get right up front is birth date. You don't see a birth date here necessarily, but there is this important date. So let's drag that over at the bottom, and birthday's in there. So we're going to go ahead and let's make this required also. Required. And just make sure you see what I'm doing here is I'm clicking on this. It looks like a pencil. The pencil is essentially your edit tool. So you click on the pencil to edit, and then I just check the box, and then I just hit close. And then we don't really need this header, important dates, and I don't really care about getting wedding anniversary information on this initial information form either. So I'm going to X that out, remove it. So there's my client information. I think that's pretty much what I want to get. I've got a header, I'm getting my name information, my address information, email, phone number, and birthday. Now we're going to get into the client agreement section. And it starts out the same way. We're going to go ahead and just drag a header, just sort of separate and start a new thing. I'm going to put this at the bottom here under birthday. And let's say we're going to call this your business name. Let's see, business name, client agreement. Okay, and you can play around with the size of these however you want. A lot of times, once you see it as an actual form, which I will show you in a little bit how to preview this, then you might want to come back and make changes before you actually send it out. But for right now, let's just get the pieces in and make sure things are set up the way we want them to. After the client agreement, these are no longer sort of these client, after the header, we don't really have any more profile information that we're going to try and collect. Instead, we're actually going to be sharing information. So what we can use to share information is this paragraph element. So I'm going to go ahead and, oops, let me see if I can drag that down. Drag the paragraph down. And I'd made a little cheat sheet here of the copy that Tom has shared with you already, I believe, but if not, you can get it from him. One thing that's a little bit annoying about traveljoy, I'll just tell you, is that it doesn't like it if you try and copy line breaks. So if you have a couple sentences with a space between or anything with a line break in it, and you try and copy it into here, I'm going to show you what happens, just so that you don't think something you're doing is wrong. But when I go and click the pencil to edit, and I go into the content here and try and paste, I get this really scary message that says, sorry, HTML is not supported. It just means that you're trying to copy too much into there. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Don't worry about it. I'm going to go back and do just one sentence. I'm going to just do it doesn't even have to be one sentence. It's basically anything that doesn't have a hard return in it. no line breaks. So that can paste in. And then I'll go ahead and let's put in another paragraph for the next sentence. So this is my next sentence here. I'm going to copy and paste. I'm using Control or Command C and Command V, but you can always use the your right click on your mouse. A lot of times you can copy and paste, or whatever app you're using. A lot of times there's going to be an edit to copy and paste. But however you copy and paste, you should be able to do it here as long as you're just doing one sentence at a time. Or you can always just type things in if you're more comfortable doing that. But I'm going to go ahead and edit. I'm going to paste that in here. And one thing that I like to do with these forms, because even though there's not a lot of copy, you can't really format it in a lot of different ways. So I at least like to put a little space in between these to make it a little bit more readable. So I'm going to use another paragraph, but I'm going to actually, you see I'm going to put it right here in between the two of them. And then all I'm going to do is, instead of putting some actual text, I'm just going to put a blank space. That's all I did, is put a blank space there and close it. And now there'll be a little break there so that it just spaces it out a little nicer for people to make it more readable. So that's kind of the basis of how you put your information into this form. But the important thing is that you are putting it there so that you can also have people acknowledge it, right? You're going to want them to somehow tell you, yes, I've read this and I agree to it. So the easiest way to do that is below this copy here is to use what they call, and what a lot of forms use is called a checkbox group. So a checkbox group here, I'm going to see if I can drag it below. Sometimes it's a little tricky because of the way that the screen scrolls to always get it exactly where you want. It's one thing I should show you. If for whatever reason you get in the wrong place, I'm just clicking on it and I'm dragging it when it's even in here already. So it's very easy to move things around too. So you don't have to delete and try again. You can just drag things around to wherever you want it. Sometimes if something is at the very bottom, it's easier to drag it up, but there you go. So now here's my checkbox group. So let's go in and edit it, and we can talk about it for a couple of minutes. So the checkbox group, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just say, I'm going to call this the client agreement, just to make sure it's very clear what I am asking people to agree to. I'm going to give them the option to agree. So all I'm saying here is I want them to say I agree. If you are using a checkbox group for something like tell me all the countries you've been to, you could add multiple options using this button add option. You could add a whole bunch of different things, and you could let people pick and choose whatever, however many they wanted to. But in this use, we really are just using it so that people can check the box to say I agree. So one thing that's important is that when they see the form, I do not want the box to be checked. So I don't know if you can see that I'm actually checking and unchecking this box. So that will show you what it will look like when the client sees it. I want it to be unchecked, so I want to make sure there's no blue check mark there. The other really important thing is that, like the fields above that were required, I want to make this one required, because I want to make sure that people cannot submit the form unless they actually check that box. Okay, and you know the reason for this is because it's a way to get your clients to affirmatively agree to your terms and conditions document without putting a lot of legalese under their nose, right? You're basically using this language here to say by checking the box below and submitting the form, they're acknowledging that they are hiring you to plan their trip and that they agree to your terms and conditions. So that's really the benefit and the strength of putting this here in this form. So that's kind of the basics of how you add elements to a form and how you get the basics of a client agreement to be part of the form as well. you can use these same elements to add other things. So for example, if you want to put in information about travel insurance, you could put another header and call this travel insurance acknowledgement. Maybe I'll make this one a little smaller, a medium size. And then I'm going to again use a paragraph here. And I have here some basics again from the document that Tom has provided as an example. Here are some basics about travel insurance. This is not all that's in Tom's document, but just to show you how the basics work. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get a checkbox at the very bottom. Travel insurance acknowledgement. There we go. And same thing, I want to make sure that my only option here is I agree. I don't want it to be pre-checked, and I want to make sure it's required. Okay, and you can continue adding additional modules, sets of modules after that as needed, depending on your business and what you want people to agree to. So I think that's it. Let me just give it a quick glance over as I scroll down. And I'm going to save. Oh, it says it's already used. I must have done something before. I'm going to call this new demo. Save. Okay, so the next step for me at this point is I want to set up an email so that I can just pre-populate my email whenever I go to send this. You really don't have to do that, because when you go to send it, you can always type over whatever is pre-populated, but I'm going to go ahead and set one up quickly just to show you so that you can see how to do that if you want. So let's do that quickly. So let's do sort of the same thing in templates. Instead of going into forms, we're going to go into emails. And I'm going to add a new template in the emails. And this is going to be my new client info, new demo. I'm going to call this new demo email just to keep them separate so that we know. And I'm going to say this is the business name. Some of this stuff is pre-populated because I've typed it before, but just so you see what I'm doing, new client information. When you set up a new email, traveljoy automatically pre-populates this as a suggestion, this hi client preferred name. If you scroll down to the bottom of the screen underneath where you can type things, you can see this note that explains what that is. It basically just means it's going to pre-populate the actual name from the profile if it's there. So that's nice to have. So for this email, I might just say something like, hi client, here's the new client information, information form we discussed. Please fill it out and review my client agreement so that I can start working on your exciting trip. Thanks, David. Whatever works best for you in terms of how you speak to your clients. You can type in whatever you want here, obviously. And if you have already set things up in traveljoy, you probably already have a signature, which basically is just something that gets pulled into every email. And when I preview this, you'll see how mine is already there. So I'll save this. And now I just want to do one more minor step back on my form again to make sure that that email is the one that always comes up when I go to send something. So let's go back to forms. Let's go back to the new demo that we were working in. And I just want to change this email template here from what was there as a default form email to the new client info, new demo email. That's what we just set up. And I can save that. Okay, I think I'm all set. So now let's put it together and see if it works. So let's go into create a trip. And I'm going to use a testing account that I have set up. Testing accounts, exciting trip. I'll make this trip for 2020. I'm not going to fill in all the other details, but if you've used traveljoy, you know you can fill in lots of other information in the trip when you set it up. But once you set up a trip, you come to this main page. You can go into create a form. So create is a little misleading. We're actually going to send a form, but it's create because we're kind of creating the email that's actually going to be mailed. So anyway, when you're on the screen, the first thing you want to do is select the actual form we want to send. So we want to send this new client info, new demo. That's the one we just set up. So here's where you can actually preview it. So I'm going to click this preview button, and you'll see here it says you are in preview mode. This is what your form looks like to your client. So this is what we set up. It should have all the information. If clients already have information in their profile, you'll see it's pre-populated, which is nice. And that's what they'll see as well, so they don't have to duplicate things if they've given you information before. But then when you get down to the client agreement area, you can see that there are the check boxes here that say I agree. They are required. You can see the little red asterisk. So that all looks good. Now I'm going to review the email. And because I linked that email template to the form, it pulls in exactly what we just put there. This is my signature I was talking about. And again, this is something that even though we set up this to pull in dynamic by default, you can override it. You can put whatever you want here. Maybe it didn't have the person's name in his profile or her profile, but you know their first name, so you could just type in whatever the name is. Anyway, after you've reviewed everything and if it looks good, you can go ahead and hit send. You'll get a little success message, and now you're back at your trip page, and you'll see in your messages that the form has been sent to your client. So then I'm going to put on my client hat, and as a client, what I hopefully will see in a second here. There we go. I just got this email from my travel agent, and it has a form for me to fill out. This is, remember, that was one of the things we filled out. We put in our form what we wanted the button to say. So the client is going to click the button. They're going to see the form the same way that you saw it when you were previewing it. They can fill in all the information if it's not already filled in, and then they're going to get to the client agreement area. And let's just say they don't do it on purpose, but maybe they forget to check a box. If they hit submit form, they're going to get an error message, which I'm sure most of us have seen filling out a form ourselves, so people are familiar with that. Once they check that box and hit submit form, again, they will get a thank you message. I think this can be customized also in traveljoy, so if that is something you want to play with, I'm sure you can find a way to do that. And then going back to me being a travel agent, when I go back to traveljoy and look at my trip now, I'm going to refresh the page. You can actually see that that form information now is all in their messages. It's all in their trip. And the call out here is you can see where it said client agreement, travel insurance acknowledgement. You see it actually says I agree, which is the acknowledgement that they did see your form and that they agreed with the information. If you ever need to get back to it and you can't find it in messages, it's always going to be in files also as a submitted form. So that's it. That's the basics. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm sure Tom will be happy to answer questions if you have any, and have a wonderful day and best of luck.